the standing orders of the National Assembly, the Standing Committee on Public Petitions is established to receive formal complaints from the public on matters of public concern and subsequently draw expert recommendations on these petitions to the plenary or take any other action as enshrined in the Standing Order 128. Accordingly, in June 2019, the committee received a petition from the concerned staff of the Gambia Tourism Board on alleged cracks and abuse of office. The committee heard from the petitioners in February 2021. This was followed by a series of public hearings at the National Assembly buildings here, as well as a visit to the GT Board office. We have heard from the former DG of GT Board, Mr. Benjamin A. Roberts, on the particular use. We also discuss. We'll also be discussing with you today reference to the particular contract for the construction of the GT Board office complex. Ultimately, Mr. Sams, as the proprietor of construct company, who was also from part of the contract, was also given the opportunity to share with us his part of the contract, part of the contract agreement. However, due to the difficulty in communication, perhaps I would like to sum my introduction by going straight to the substance of the petition. But before we proceed, as a matter of procedure, any witness that appears before the Public Petitions Committee must take an oath or affirmation before we proceed. This is mandated by Section 109(3) of the 1997 Constitution. To save time, actually, I don't want to go to details, but the Constitution mandates us to put witness on the oath or affirmation. Then from there we can proceed.
Okay.
And now I will now invite the clerk to administer the said affirmation.
Yeah, Mr. Adler, I guess you can. You may kindly, yes, just look at the committee, if you can. Very well, thank you very much. And then maybe just repeat after me. We will have to try to go with a makeshift start. Repeat after me.
Okay.
I, Abdullah Haidara.
I, Abdullah Haidara.
Do affirm that.
I, Abdullah Haidara.
Do affirm that.
Do affirm.
Do affirm.
Hello?
Yes, are you getting me? Are you getting me?
Yes, I said I, Abdullah Haidara.
Yes, okay.
I'm not hearing you.
Yes.
I said I, Abdullah Haidara.
Can we take it for record purpose again? Can we take it again, please, for record purpose? I, Abdullah Haidara.
He's not here. Sound.
I, Abdullah Haidara.
No, yes, I, Abdullah Haidara.
Do affirm that.
Do affirm that
I will speak the truth.
I will speak the truth,
The whole truth.
the whole truth,
And nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
I'll be done.
No, it's okay. You just now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haidara. We can now proceed from there. Now, the procedure, we have a set of questions that we would like to ask. So, we would like, like you to answer the question to the best of your ability. Then, if I exhaust as the lead man, the honorable members of the committee will also be given the opportunity to ask supplementary questions for the sake of clarification if there's any need. So that's the way we.
That's fine.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Haidara. First, I would like to ask if you have any knowledge of an agreement, a contract agreement that was entered into between the Gambia Tourism Board, Construct Limited, and the Gambia Tourism, the Ministry of Tourism and Culture on the 24th day of July 2014. Yes,
thank you very much, Honorables. I am glad to be with you to try and shed light and clarity on this issue that you have mentioned. On the particular questions, yes, I took over GT board in March of 2015. And by virtue of my responsibilities, I have reviewed documentations and files, and amongst them was the GT board head office, which was at the material time agenda as part of the execution's mandate of the Director General and the Gambia Tourism Board. Yes, I'm aware of the contract.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haidara. If you are aware of the said contract, would you like to give us an overview, your understanding of the whole contract? I'm saying you've told the committee that you are aware of the said contract. If that is correct,
yes.
Can you please give us a detailed overview and explanation of the said contract?
Well, if I recollect, the contract was to build a GT board, Ministry of Tourism and Culture head office. And part of the contract was to include what we call an on-ground act, kickstart a process of pay and pack within the Senegambia area. The other particulars of the contract was to deal with the occupancy of the Gambia Tourism Board as part of the area that was designated as an office for the Gambia Tourism Board and the Ministry of Tourism and Culture. I think the contract negotiations at the far at 2012 or 2013, and the contract was signed and agreed prior to me coming into office in 2015.
Thank you very much. We were told that this contract was signed before you coming into the office.
Yes, before I come into the office. Yes, that is correct.
Yes, that's correct. But
that is correct.
Yeah. Besides what you've told the committee, besides what you've already told us, do you have any other information?
Hello? Hello?
No, besides what we've just shared with the committee, do you have additional information reference to the said contract?
Yes, it's been a while since I reviewed that contract, but I know GT Board was meant to pay a part contribution to the Mr. Farashams, who was the contractor, as part of the GT Board's contribution for the additional space that was supposed to be created for both the Ministries of Tourism and the Gambia Tourism Board. There was, if my memory serves me right, it was over $200,000. I think $225,000 or $220,000 was meant to be paid by the Gambia Tourism Board vis-a-vis on behalf of Ministry of Tourism and Culture, Gambia Tourism Board inclusion for the execution of the contract. And the rest of the contract was for Mr. Farashams to provide that space within the building. And there are other clauses within the contract have the provision of the generators, the provision of other fixtures and fittings that were not part of the contract. But the generators issues were also, I think, was not part of Mr. Sams, but on the part of the GT Board. So the contract was quite elaborate. And when I looked at it at that material time, it suffices for the purpose for which it was entered.
Thank you very much. You told us that the contract was signed before you coming into the office. The signing of the contract
yes,
preceded your coming into office.
Yes, sir.
But when you assume office,
yes, sir.
Would you like to share with this committee whether, as far as your understanding was concerned, whether the said contract was actually implemented as planned? Do you have any idea about it?
Yes. as far as the activities for the implementation of the contract is concerned, we were on track. We had some hitches here and there in terms of issues within the environment, economic environment, and the political environment. But besides those challenges, we are pushing very hard to ensure that the contract was implemented. Even though we had challenges of the Ebola crisis, we had that brought a lot of negative economic impact to both the GT board and the contractor in terms of cash flow and the revenues for the implementation of the project. There came a time that we also have the political impasse that was effected after the elections of 2016. All these are impasses and challenges compounded to some of the delays in the contract, in the execution of contract. But in a nutshell, and in all honesty, we were trying very hard and we were on track, despite some of the delays of which we had a good understanding was Mr. Farasham's on the way forward.
Mr. Haider, may I further ask, probably as well, may I further ask you for the purpose of clarification? I said, may I further ask for the purpose of clarification?
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as your understanding of or your knowledge of the contract was concerned,
yeah,
was the contract completed as per agreement?
Well, if you say completed as per agreement, I may not be able to delve into that because I was not there when it completed. I was there when it was almost completed. And at the material time before we came out of that contract, everything else was being executed as was planned. If you say completed as at the time before the contract was shifted to another dimension, yes, it was completed as planned. We have pitches also, pitches in terms of the genset, the generator set, the placement of the generator set, the wiring of the generator set, and other fixtures and fittings within the structure. Those had part of the delays in terms of the execution of the infrastructure works of the project. But if I want to make reference to completion, I may not make the best of judgment, but I was not there when it was completed. But they were on track for completion until the project, the contract, was somehow moved to another dimension, which I know you will come to that. You know, so up to the material time, yes, it was completed as planned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haider. Would you like to share with us when did you leave that position as DG of GTB?
When did you leave?
I'm not getting you.
When did you leave as DG?
I left the office June 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Haider. We understand you were in the Gambia.
Pardon?
You were in the Gambia recently.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you know during that period of time whether actually you were in the Gambia of recent?
Yes.
Yeah. Would you know during that period whether the GT board and the Ministry of Tourism has moved into the office complex as per agreement?
No, I don't know whether they have moved or they have not moved. But if I take the prospective agreement, I would want to make the assumption, though my assumption has carried a very heavy weight because it's untested. I am doing an untested generalization of my understanding while I was there that they did not move to that building. This is my understanding. But I may be wrong that they have moved unbeknown to me. But I did not ask, and I did not visit them. Yeah.
Thank you very much. At this material point, I would like to give the opportunity to my members as per agreement that if
I'm not getting you.
Now I would like to give an opportunity to members of the committee to ask any.
Hello?
I would now love to give an opportunity chance to my colleagues to ask supplementary questions for the sake of clarification, if there's any.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Honorable Chief.
I can shout. Okay. Yes, thank you, Mr. Hydra.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hydra, we are informed that during your period, the minister had intervened and sent some GT board staff home, but at a salary of 50%. Did that happen in your period? Were you aware of that?
Yes, I am aware of that, but technically it was not during my period. I was sent out for that to happen. While I was the Director General of the Tourism Board, that 50% did not take effect. I am also part of the victims who have suffered that 50% cut off pay, but this was immediate. I was asked to leave office. But it was in the making.
Mr. Hydra, if you were opportune to the said contract, a part of the contract has indicated that a lease period of 30 years was granted to construct company. As part of the contract, were you aware of such information?
Actually, it's 35 years. As far as I know, as per contract. The original contract was 30 years. But that is without the underground parking. When the issues of the underground parking was brought up by the former minister and then Queen Director General, the contractor, I am sure, must have done his analysis, the cost of an underground parking. And that cost was translated to a longer period of agreement. So, and that 5 years was added to the original contract, now coming up to 35 years of contract. I am aware of that.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Hydra. Thank you very much, Mr. Hydra.
You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you. I want to know why was the GTP did not occupy the building?
I'm not getting you, sir.
Hello? Are you getting me now?
Yes, a bit louder. I want to be very clear on your question.
Yes, what he's saying is why didn't the GT board occupy the building as agreed, as part of the agreement of the contract?
I don't hear you. Come again, sir.
What he's saying is that why didn't the GT board, because Gambia Tourism Board, occupy the building as part of the agreement?
Mr. Saba, I'm not really hearing you.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Hydra, the member is asking why the GT board did not occupy the offices at the tropics as per the agreement. Why did they not occupy their offices instead of going to maintain the old office?
Okay, sometimes in 2018, when the new administration came in, we had a new Minister of Tourism and Culture. And part of the policy formulation of the Minister of Culture at that material time, the Minister felt that the GT board should not be in an office complex combined with shopping and all other activities within that complex. And as a result of which, he summons us to a meeting and informed that we need to renegotiate the contract so that GT Port will have a sovereign, this is what, office, completely separate from what is originally agreed as being a shopping complex. That emanated and resulted to discussions with Mr. Farashad. It was not an easy discussion because at that time, Mr. Charles had gone very far in terms of executing the first agreement. That means he has to now abandon the office spaces that have already been created, partition, tile, except with some the generator set and other fittings like doors and windows and air conditioning, a new agreement. And in that new agreement, Mr. Sams was not building for 700 square meters. We've increased it to 2,000 square meters. 3 layers. So the GT Port did not occupy, and the Ministry of Tourism and Culture did not occupy the spaces because that contract was null and void. So therefore, I assume that they would not and could not occupy that office simply because that contract occupied that place was overtaken by another contract. So, coming back to your questions, that if GT Port and the Minister of Tourism was occupying that space, simply is because the contract for them to occupy that place was null and void, overtaken by another contract, revised contract. But having said that, and to make more clarity, the space that have been created during the process, the Ministry of Tourism and Culture was no longer coming to join the GT Port in that part. That was also another arrangement that the minister felt at that time, that from the offices of the GT Port to Banjul, meeting, crisscrossing, might pose some logistic challenges. So we were asked to do some works, i.e. to rehabilitate part of the Ministry of Tourism and Culture where they right now is in terms of the boardroom, repaint and furnish the boardroom, redo all the toilets for the staff of the Ministry of Tourism and Culture, redo the toilet for the Minister of Tourism and Culture, and the Permanent Secretary. For the Permanent Secretary's toilet facility, I cannot remember if it was done because we have technical issues to add an additional structure to that building right now at Portland. But this was done so that the current building would have been the building for the Gambia Tourism Board. But having said that, during the design of the new structure, we have made enough provision for that in case they change their mind. But currently, the space that Mr. Sam has created was for the Gambia Tourism Board current staff and future staff expansion. If I may come back to your question to say that the Gambia Tourism Board vis-a-vis Ministry of Tourism and Culture is not occupying the space simply because the former contract that allowed them to stay in that building is null and void. Are you getting me?
Yes.
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 I have a supplementary question to that.
Yes.
Hello, Mr. Hydra?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Right, I have a supplementary question to that.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Will you be surprised to hear that the original contract of the 35 years has been increased to 50 years foreign and other sites identified by the GTP to be constructed by the Farasam. Your reaction, please.
Yes. You see, I wouldn't want to say that the current contract has been increased to 50 years. Because the 50 years that we are saying is an application to all investments in tourism within the tourism development area. The least period for tourism establishment within the TVA is 50 years. And I think that's what has translated to the 50 years, but not the contract per se that have been increased to 50 years. Are you getting me?
Yeah, we got it clear. Yes, Honorable Ture.
Yes, Mr. Haidara.
Yes, sir.
Was it a directive from the ministry or from the minister that the GT board abandons the first agreement not to occupy the space to create another office? Or was it just a discussion that emanated to that effect?
Well, I may not want to use your choice of words to say directive, but it's a policy pronunciation from the minister that he believes the arrangement for GT board to be there is not the best arrangement and it wants to be changed. As a result, he convened us to a meeting and said that we need to renegotiate the contract. When that was done, we have no other much option but to take it to the board for the board's consideration and approval. The board considers it vis-a-vis what the ministry wants us to do on the new arrangement, and then we were given the approval to proceed as the minister has alluded to. If that constitutes a directive, maybe, but this is how it went.
Honorable Jawara, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Haidara. Can you please inform this August body whether there is any act in the GT board of how to acquire land to foreign investors?
Come again?
Whether there is any act in the GT board. The committee wants to know whether there is any act in the GT board about how foreign investors acquire land in the tourism development area.
I don't think there is an act per se, but there is an act, GT board has an act. But whether there is a separate act on that, I did not lay my hands on it while I was the General of the Tourism Board.
Just a follow-up question. Will you be surprised that Mr. Sam appeared before this commission and told us hello? Are you getting me?
No.
Hello? Are you getting me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead now.
Mr. Sam informed this committee that he acquired this land.
I'm not. Go ahead. I cannot tell you. Louder.
I said, Mr. Sam, the contractor,
Yes.
appeared before this committee.
Okay.
And told us that the land was acquired to him by free.
The land was acquired to him by?
Free.
The land was provided.
Are you referring to the GT board head office or another land?
You know, I asked you about whether there is any act guiding the GT board to acquire free land to foreign investors. You said no.
No, which land are you referring to? The Mr. Sam's land where the GT board is built?
The one Mr. Sam is acquired, the one given to him as a contract.
I think we are having problem of communication.
All right, Haida, what we will do actually, we'll come back to that. We'll come to what we need to just update, adjust the question a little bit for further understanding. In the meantime, whilst CC does that, Honorable Ture, do you have one?
Yeah. Mr. Haidala.
Yes, sir.
As you said, it looks like there is one contract, and before that is completed, there is a renegotiation to have another contract.
Yeah.
So it looks like contracts are being renegotiated upon each other. One is superseding the other. Don't you think, in your opinion, what do you think, in your opinion, is it better to have a separate contract at each given time rather than to be updating contracts upon each other? Because that seems to have created some problem. What is your opinion?
I think, well, it's an opinion, yes. I'll give my opinion.
Yes.
What I do understand from that contract, that the part that is relating to the GT board, Ministry of Tourism occupying the current contract was not and void. But that contract itself, there is a new contract that spells out the new agreement. So I think now the two contracts are separate, giving the dimension of the existing contract for the execution of the head office. So, yes, it would have been better, actually my opinion, maybe that we have gone that far to complete the project vis-a-vis the GT board, Ministry of Tourism head office. But I want to be very honest and state my opinion. Yeah. I think that contract, during the time of formulating a first contract, it was a very beautiful contract. Financial modelings were done to come up with financial benefits. But I think it's more than that. Gambia Tourism Board has a mandate. And the mandate of Gambia Tourism Board was not only to go into financial negotiations. The contract, in my opinion, that you have asked for, did not look at the other qualitative aspects of the contract. It concentrated on GT board having an office within that complex. GT board would not pay rent. GT board will be owning the complex. Yes. But what about the other qualitative analysis vis-a-vis the mandate of the Gambia Tourism Board? And that is to market, promote, and manage the Gambia tourism industry. Yeah. That focus, in most instances, we are being miscarried forward. And as a result of which, the institutional review that came to establish GT Board was trying to address the issues of Gambia Tourism Board, but focusing on the core mandate of the institution that is to market, promote, and develop the Gambia tourism industry. What the contract did was to look at more in terms of financial for sustainability of the tourism board. The Gambia Tourism Board, like many other tourism boards in other countries, are established by government. If they are established by government, government must take the responsibility to ensure that the institution is well maintained. Tourism is very competitive, very, very competitive. Look at our neighbors. When I was in office, Ghana came to study for a study tour to look at the Gambia Tourism Board strategy and action plans for implementation in Ghana. Our neighbor Senegal, look at Cape Verde, look at these other countries where the tourism boards are performing very well without having to concentrate on vis-a-vis financial sustainability. The Gambia Tourism Board has other revenue streams that it is using to support its marketing campaign and other programs. I don't want the focus of the Gambia Tourism Board to be like a financial institution. The contract, as I said, was a beautiful contract. The first public-private partnership. But that contract, if it's executed and is completed, Gambia Tourism Board is a regulator. How would Gambia Tourism Board as a regulator own an entity with restaurants, supermarkets, and other tourism facilities, receive revenue in terms of rental, receive revenue in terms of operational license, and if the Gambia Tourism Board not competing with its industry that it is supposed to regulate, if the tenants and all the other facilities within the Gambia Tourism Board default, what is the role of the regulator to ensure that these our tenants, these our people are put into specs as to what the regulations say? So I think the contract overlooked some of these issues. The other issue that I do believe, and should have asked for my opinion, and this is an opportunity for me to say, is the Gambia Tourism Board need to focus on the rebranding of the country called the Gambia in terms of destination arrival on tourism. Because we are losing out. Because our focus is being diluted. The focus of the Gambia Tourism Board should be how to maintain and increase the arrival, and not only arrival, quality of tourism arrival. These are this quality of tourism product and other facilities. If we begin to focus our discussions, the agenda on how Gambia Tourism Board should create money, the most important core function of the Gambia Tourism Board might be compromised. If you do a study tour, you go to all these countries I mentioned, the institutions are being run and supported by the government and partners. So if we want to emulate international best practice, let the focus of Gambia Tourism Board not only in the creation of revenue stream, but in the implementation of the mandates of the Gambia Tourism Board in terms of building and sustaining a tourism industry like many other countries are doing, because we are losing out. Our focus is no longer on the core mandate of Gambia Tourism Board. What I want to say is, the idea of having a separate office that creates a corporate identity for the Gambia Tourism Board is not a bad idea, it's a good idea. In that way, the Gambia Tourism Board will add into its branding corporate identity that comes with the values of the brand. But you cannot have a brand in the nature and dynamics of the Gambia Tourism Board within a shopping complex. There is no sovereignty in terms of its corporate identity. So for Gambia Tourism Board to assume its responsibilities, to market the country, to promote tourism, to maintain and build a tourism industry, we need to, as part of the investigation, we need to look at what is the core mandate of Gambia Tourism Board, so that the Gambia Tourism Board will serve its purpose. The other thing that I have intentionally asked for my opinion is the structure is beautiful, but the structure is not for an office, in my opinion. Look at the windows of that office. Cylindrical, tall building. It may pose maintenance issues. When the minister pronounced and we are to renegotiate the contract, we've consulted with a consultant who has informed me that the building was not designed to be an office. It was designed to be a shopping mall. So it's not a bad idea, after all, to have a separate identity for Gambia Tourism Board. And above that, the space that was negotiated has been increased to 2,000 square meters for future expansion. So I think the idea of having a good office and the way and manner maybe the contract was short-lived with the first is what we are discussing. Yeah. But the idea of having an identity, a corporate office is good. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Haidara, for that elaborate response. Can we allow Honorable Toure further supplementary while Honorable Jawara updates her question, and then later we'll go to Honorable Yasin.
Yes, Mr. Haidara.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the elaborate assessment of the situation. But my doubt is, what was the criteria that was utilized to assess the benefits of the GT board or of the government in the whole agreement? Because now Mr. Sams has the whole complex, to himself. The offices of the MOTC also belong to him. The offices of the GT board also belong to him, including all the shops and all the parking lot and everything. And then he also got the land more or less for free. So what assessment, what criteria was used to measure what the benefit of the government? Because now the man also has another 50-year lease on top of the 30-year lease. What was the criteria that was put in place actually in this agreement?
Well, I cannot say for a fact that in the new agreement there was a cost-benefit analysis for the new complex. The assessment was more of a qualitative analysis than an empirical analysis, vis-a-vis a financial modeling as to what is the cost of abandoning the first contract, the new contract. Maybe there's a shortfall in this new arrangement that perhaps, I may not remember, but I think the Director of Finance is alive and is there. He may help us to understand, because these things were discussed extensively before we came to 2,000 square meters of an office complex with 3 floors. Maybe that was part of the analysis. But what we are saying is, what is the cost-benefit analysis of the new complex vis-a-vis abandoning 35 years? Yes. I could not recollect, and honestly could recollect, doing a cost-benefit analysis on that new agreement, except a qualitative analysis. And those are the ones I have just mentioned in my previous intervention.
Thank you.
Maybe that's a big gap that we didn't have looked.
Would you like to share with us the said consultant? The name of the consultant, sir.
Which consultant?
You didn't mention that the consultant said the design was not in order.
Come again?
If we get it clearly, you didn't mention that the consultant said the design, especially the design of the windows, was not correct.
Yes, but I wanted to create my indulgences to understand what the minister wanted. Because we were all eager to go in. My discussions with the consultant, though he was in my office, I invited him. It was not very formal, because I wanted, as Director General, to have a separate opinion before I go to the board. The consultant, I think his name is Marco. Marco, he's very good in designing hotels and designing things. I don't know if he's still in the Gambia. He's a white guy, he's Spanish or something like that. Because I was told that he was one of the best consultants. He was working with some Gambians. I invited him in my office, and I told him what was happening, And I said, what do you think? And he gave me that information.
Thank you, sir.
But it was not like formal. I called, I invited him.
That is clear. That's clear. Honorable Ndeye, do you have a supplementary question?
Yeah, it was about the meeting, Mr. Haider, that you had with him. You said the minister called you and then you had a meeting with him talking about the changing of the building. So in your discussion, I think he should have informed you extremely why. Why does he want to do this? So, and if not, did you ask him why? And did he explain the reason why he wanted to stay away from the new building, which was already almost completed? The minister. You had a meeting with him, according to your statement. You were saying,
yes.
You were saying that you had a meeting with him, and then automatically he told you that, well, this building, we are no more going there. We are going to have a new building where you know that the Minister of Tourism.
Well,
and
I think the minister must.
So did he tell you the reason why?
Well, I think the minister must have been pondering on that issue since he came to office. So I don't know exactly what was going through his mind. I can only report what I heard him say and the instruction he had given. So the genesis of him saying it and calling us, I will not be able to tell because at that time I was not in the minister's mind. I was the Director General and he called us up and tell us what he thinks and what he wanted us to do.
Yeah, but did you as a DG ask him the reasons why he is just having that in his mind? Maybe a discussion may lead you to that, and then you ask him the reason why that was in his mind. Have you ever done that?
But I think I have stated that the minister said that this building was not befitting the corporate identity of the Gambia Tourism Board. The minister did mention that the area, the shopping complex, with all other activities happening around the office, is not the best environment for a corporate office for like Gambia Tourism Board. Okay. So once he has made these statements, it is necessary really for me to go back and ask him, why are you saying that? But he has given his message. Okay. He said he has been thinking about it. Anytime he passes by, he looks at the environment in the office, he thinks people should be identified within its corporate self and being identified within a complex.
Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Toure, please.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Haider. Mr. Haider, you know, in the new agreement, where the developers was to build an office for the GT board and the ministry, it was stated that the GT board was supposed to pay $225,000 to the developer.
For this new one?
Yes, for the new one. $225,000.
No, I think that was for the old agreement.
That was for the old agreement, yeah. Well, I'm just asking you, I don't know. Was it for the new one or for the old one?
I could not recollect that, but I know for the first agreement, City Board had a counterpart funding for that office. And it was one of the reasons, for this new agreement, that Mr. Sams had attempted to resist doing it. Because the board was very specific. The board said at no cost to Gambia Tourism Board.
Okay.
At no financial cost, I want to clarify that. At no financial cost, because the land is given by Gambia Tourism Board.
All right. Thank you very much. In the absence, we have.
I withdraw because my concern
was addressed with us. Do you have a further supplementary question?
No.
No, for me, I'm always, I'm done now. Thank you very much, Mr. Haider.
Yes.
I think in the absence of Unless a colleague wants to ask
Just
a
the
final.
Mr. Hydra, in your opinion, would you consider this whole agreement that the GT board actually attained value for money in this whole agreement? Was there value for money for the government?
In this whole arrangement?
Yes.
Yes, I think so. I think so because I was the chairman of the board of directors of GIA. And I know what it costs to have that office, GIA office. They are still paying those loans at heavy cost. And I'm sure there are few institutions in the country that is owning their head office of that magnitude. So if you look at having to have a corporate office, 2,000 square meters within the strategic location, 3 floors, ultra-modern building that the GT board would own forever, when the GT board had never owned an office. I think it's value for money. And maybe there is something that you did not ask, which I will tell you. The current rent arrangement of the GT board, I am not saying it's been done, but in the agreement, H.𝐸𝐺 is supposed to contribute $900,000 annually until he hands over that office. Every year. Until the office is completed. So that is an additional cost to H.𝐸𝐺. So after all the expenses in that old office, coming to build a new office, and for him to satisfy us, we put in another condition of him contributing to the annual rent of where GT board is right now, up to $900,000 annually. So if you ask me, and you say, in my opinion, I think it's value for me.
All right, that was said to be the last supplement question, unless I give you an exception to do what we will now deem as finally.
Just to, because when you look at the value of money, Mr. Hydra, the contractor, Mr. Sam, was not supposed to pay Operation Lansing to the government for 50 years. He would not pay operational Lansing.
He will pay. All the establishments there will pay the operational Lansing without paying. While I was there, I don't know the current arrangement. But according to contract, he will pay his operational license for every single outlet. Forever.
But Mr. Sam,
it's not a one-off. Year on year, every single outlet in that premises will pay their operational license. That's what is agreed. And if it doesn't have to agree, it's by statute of the GT board regulation. They have to give it.
Except Mr. Sam, right? Except Mr. Sams.
Come again?
Except Mr. Sams, right? Mr. Sams would not pay, but the rest would pay, right?
What do you mean Mr. Sam would not pay? Every commercial, Mr. Sam doesn't have an office there. The cinema will pay. The bowling alley will pay. All the others, so even the space that GT board and Minister of Tourism was supposed to be occupied, if it's paid, operational license has to be paid. I'm not saying it's paid, it has to be paid. So there is no exceptions to that regulation. It has to be paid forever. You know, it's not like that and one of the contention before the new agreement has told some of the projects that when you come to the offices that was supposed to be Gambia Tourism Board, there is a space on the right which Mr. Satch was claiming for. and we did not agree that Mr. Sam should have an office in our office. Because there is a big space there, and we said that we're going to use it for our drivers' office. So that office, he said it was meant for it. But in the end, we agreed that he would let go. Well, it was part of the challenge. So we overcome the gate. We said, okay, that's not problem, Mr. Hydra. But they have to pay their operationalizing year on year.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hydra. Definitely that should bring us to the end of the proceedings. It's been a long day, but with your permission and permission of the members, for my better understanding, the $900,000 per annum fee that Mr. Sam is supposed to pay, would like to repeat that for you for better understanding. That's in respect of what? Yes. And which side? Is it the Tropic Shopping Center that will be paying $900,000?
No. No agreement. You know, there's a deal. Even though, let me be very honest. Yeah. Let me be very honest. Even though the project has delayed, and 80% of the delay was on our side. When we entered the new agreement, our agreement to the minister and to President was that GT Board cannot continue to pay rent for another 2 years or 3 years. So, in that way, if we are to taking the contract for another contract, Mr. Sams must contribute to our rent. It was not easy, but Mr. Sams, in the end, agreed that that's our relationship. And he does not want us to push this beyond our agreement. He will contribute to our annual rent every year, $900,000, until the new office is completed and the keys are handed over.
Until the new office.
That is well understood. Mr. Hydra, thank you so much. It's been a long day, but we cannot. I said thank you so much. I want to see this opportunity.
This is my pleasure.
Yeah, to thank you so much for taking time of your very, very busy schedule to appear before the Public Relations Committee. We wish you well. Probably this could not be the end. If there's any need for me to invite you, we will.
Absolutely.
If there's any
absolutely, I'll be very willing. I'll be very willing to come on board, and then we discuss this, and then give clarity to the best of our knowledge, inshallah. I also want to thank you very much, because these issues of the GT board, for me, is very sad. And I'll be very happy that we discuss it to get to the bottom of it. Because we love GT board. We have done everything possible within our purview to bring GT board to international best practice. GT board was the only institution in the country that has written to government to say we don't want your support, give it to another institution, we can stand on our own. By the time I leave that office, we have graduated 5 people with Masters of Business Administration. We have graduated 5 people with BSc, 4 people with bachelor's degrees and diplomas. So we have also graduated 2 people with MSc. So GT is highly capacitated at that time. And if you go to GT Port at that time, if you enter any of our offices, I bet you cannot find a better behavior and decorum than GT Board. So it's an institution that is very dear to our heart. We have, till now, we hold the highest records of Persian flight. We hold the highest record of the number of aircraft that was landing in that country on a weekly basis. 61 flights were landing at the Gambia International Airport on a weekly basis during that time. That's not a small measure. For GT Board to be in the limelight, all this news I'm hearing, I read it from the media, from people who call me, I have a very deep and saddened heart. Because GT Board don't deserve this. And the people of GT Board, you have mixed people, you have very few people. Everybody that works in that GT Board today has a piece of land provided for by this management. So when by the time you retire, you can get the place to live. Everybody in that GT Board was promoted more than 2 or 3 times in 5 years. their salaries increased. Please don't let GT board fall like other institutions. It's a very good institution. It was managed through stability. It was managed with international best practice. When we go out to the international forum, we were the envy of people. People loved us. Senegal was copying us. Ghana was copying us. Sierra Leone was copying us. All these countries wanted to know how we do it. Even people were copying our smiling post. So we ran GT board for that 5 years period, including the time that Benjamin was there, to bring GT board from zero down to the highest level of administration and people in that country. GT board is a good institution. When we get to the bottom of this, we will come to know that this allegation and petition is not based on what is being said. There are internal issues that would have been addressed. This matter would not have been here today. We need to look at the real nitty-gritty. Why this is happening? What has happened to come to this? We managed the GT board for 5 good years, and we were the envy of that country. Please, I want to plead, crave your indulgences to bring GT board intact and to make sure that Gambia becomes the envy of the industry. The industry needs our help. You, the National Assembly people, the Tourism Select Committee, the industry is almost dead and it needs help. Let's focus on to build the Gambian tourism. Not Gambian tourism, but Gambian tourism. We need it. The country needs it. Let's look at those who can deliver the mandate and we give them the responsibility to deliver the mandate. And let's shy away from this personal infighting, these personal grievances. It will not take this country forward. Everybody has your back. Let the strongest carry on the weakest lead, so we can move the industry forward. The stakeholders need us. The country needs us. We can do better. We can do better than insulting and saying things in the social media that are unfounded. I plead, I'm sorry, because I love, everybody knows me, I love that institution because I know that I have content. Everybody in that institution were very happy people. Up to 2016, 2017, very happy people. What happened? Why? Why the growth? Why the grievance? That's what we need to look into. So that we will not repeat what has happened at the GT board, never again. I thank you very much for your time. I thank you very much for the opportunity, and let's develop this country. We love this country. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you so much. On that note, I have the singular honor and praise to officially close this hearing, and may we pray in our own way for Allah's blessing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No, big.